Hello, viewers, and welcome back to the String Theory podcast. Today I am here with...
Hi, I'm Luke. I am 21 years old, and I like to call myself a creative, so we'll go with that.
Alrighty, and then today we are going to be talking about Luke's journey as a theater major, and we're going to be talking about art classes and a bunch of other fun artsy stuff. So Luke, to start, would you be able to tell us about your journey in college and what classes you took?
So I graduated 2020, which was a bad year to graduate, and I originally was going to get my BFA in musical theater, but that didn't happen, obviously, because I was not going to pay that much tuition to have classes online. So it took up until this fall semester that I actually decided to go to college, and I was like, I'll just get my theater degree and I'll take some art classes as well. But I kind of realized, as much as I had wanted to go to college all throughout high school, to prove a point, it wasn't really for me, and especially not in the art department. I've always loved art and creating, especially with my hands, but having a curriculum that kind of railroads you into, this is what art is, and I'm grading your creativity, was not very good for my mental health. And I started to realize I just was not enjoying creating anything for the class. No fault to the professor. I think she's great. Not everything is for everybody, and college in general wasn't for me, but especially trying to pursue something artsy in college was just very difficult for me, I think.
That's completely fair. I also took some art classes, and I definitely feel the same. Did you feel a type of nervousness when you had critiques in your art class?
Funnily enough, I never actually made it to a critique. The first one that we had, I was in the hospital, so I missed it. But I had never been more relieved to miss class in my life. I know that I am a good artist, and people have told me that, but the idea of having your peers sort of judge something that comes so deeply from the heart was not something I was super fond of.
That's completely understandable. I feel like oftentimes when I was taking art classes, if I made a piece that really came from the heart, it wouldn't get a lot of good feedback. It'd be like, oh, you can do X, Y, and Z. But when it was a totally last minute project and I made some BS of a meaning behind it, everyone's like, this is so great and genius and profound and you're breaking the glass ceiling, or whatever. And it kind of just felt like a social experiment at one point. Did you ever feel that way? I know you didn't go to a critique, but if you were in a critique, do you think that you would feel the same?
Definitely. I mean, especially when it comes to art, everyone is given the same prompt, broad or very narrow, but everyone is expecting to see a certain level of not even professionalism, but there is just something that you can be creative but not too creative, because no one wants to spend too much time figuring out what your art means. And so that really puts a damper on what you really can do. And then also it's almost like they're kind of trying to catch you off, and you didn't do this exact type of skill technically the way that we should have done it, and therefore your art is meaningless. And I mean, that would have horrified me, because if I'm being honest, I've never done anything by the book.
I feel like doing things by the book is almost hypocritical, especially for a topic like art. I started with my art classes, I wanted to be an art teacher. And then this was my first class where I had a critique in. At least in person. I've had online critiques, but I felt like those weren't really like real people to me, because you don't see them face to face. You don't really put a picture to them. But in person, it was so humbling to show a piece that I've worked so hard on, and there was just dead silence in the room. And do you feel like within in-person classes for art, did you find yourself constantly comparing yourself?
Absolutely. Because there was also like a gen ed art class, there was varying skill levels from all of the people, which did kind of help soothe my nerves to a certain degree. But at the same time, yes, I'm an artist. I'm not an artist first. Like, I do music, and there were artists first in that class. And, you pass by their screens. And it was also a digital medium class as well. So I would walk in and I would just see like these perfect forms shaded wonderfully. And I mean, like, it does kind of hurt. It's both humbling and almost humiliating to sort of value a skill that you have so much and then go into a classroom and realize, like, maybe what I'm doing isn't as special as I thought it was. And while that's not true, that is definitely an ideology that can be very heavily enforced in art classes. It's like, okay, I'm really not all that in a bag of chips.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that what age did you start making art?
I mean, I think every kid was doing drawings in like the first grade, but I started taking art seriously probably like fourth grade, like 9 or 10. I always really liked anime and cartoons and things, so I very quickly realized I wanted to be a part of that industry somehow.
That's fair. Do you think that if you were like a child prodigy genius, do you think that you would still compare yourself? Like, do you think that that's just human nature?
I do think even like the top dogs in anything can face like imposter syndrome, or also there is this thing where, the higher you are, the further you have to fall. And so for me, while I think I'm pretty good at what I do, if I thought I was the best or everyone told me I was the best, I would probably crack and crumble, because that's a lot of pressure. You can understand that you have skills and apply them, and everyone in the world can tell you that you are great, but sometimes it can still be very hard to believe. And so I feel for a lot of those like child prodigies, especially not just art, but like things with like piano, right? A lot of those kids, they end up hating the instrument because they have to be perfect, and that's not what they want. And like, I would never want that for myself either.
Do you think majoring in theater and taking art classes, do you think that it ruined the experience of performing in visual and studio arts for you?
I think it was already kind of on the way out. I had a really rough experience with performing arts in high school. We won't get into all of that. But I wanted college to be my second chance at trying to, get myself on stage and bring back that confidence that I used to have before it kind of got beaten out of me. But theater kids and kids of the theater can be very, very cliquey, which we all know, and it can be very isolating. I mean, I know we've had a private conversation or two where I told you, like, I'm a very social guy, and I sat alone in all of my classes, which is very strange for me because I love conversation. I really enjoy interacting with people, but there is a hierarchy that is really heavily enforced in like the theater scene of like, if you haven't been in a million shows and you don't know everybody, then you are nobody. And I was nobody. And I don't think that I'm nothing or I'm nobody, but sitting in those classrooms and suddenly feeling very alone, I realized maybe, community theater and Broadway and all that isn't isn't my thing, so I kind of turned to the local music scene instead.
That's really interesting. Do you think that college ruined the experience for you? Like, do you think you'll give it another shot down the road?
I think it really depends. If the planets line up correctly and all the stars in the sky are shining down on me, then sure, I would love to perform in that capacity again.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it's something I will seek out anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even that I'm giving up on it necessarily, or I'm finally done.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it's healthy for me to pursue right now.
Mm-hmm.
In where I'm at in my life. I'm doing well, and I don't want to jeopardize that by suddenly putting 2 million tons of pressure on myself again.
Right. You mentioned that you were in the music scene now. How is that scene treating you?
Shout out the San Diego music scene. I was always like a little metalhead, wannabe punk kid
Mm-hmm.
growing up, and it took until this year to finally start going to shows. And my entire life has changed, the way I view myself, the way I talk to people. My closest friends have said that like I shine more and I seem so much happier, and I believe that I am. There is a community in the music scene that is so different than that like isolating feeling of the theater, which is interesting because it's still singing and, dancing and playing instruments. But I think something that like binds us all together is that there's no pressure to like make it big. Every band does want to make it big to a certain degree, but in the local scene, we are all having a good time and we love each other so much, and we're just here to like watch each other play music and do all the other stuff that comes with the show.
That's really beautiful. What would you say would be the difference between the type of clickiness that's in the theater community and then the community of well-being that's within the music scene?
With theater, there is, like I've mentioned before, the very strong desire to like come out on top and be the next Jordan Fisher, the next Barrett Wilbert Reed, whatever her name is. I can't even remember. My bad, queen. Actually, she might be racist. Moving on. But everyone wants to be the next big breakout star in the theater world. And you can have best friends, but if they get the lead over you, you probably won't talk to them for months. Whereas with the music scene, there's so many bands that come in and out of rotation, and even though there are bands that are more popular than others, it is still, everyone treats you with the same level of respect and kindness. And what's crazy is, usually if you go to like a musical and, maybe your friend's in it, after the show, they have a completely different persona. It's usually not your friend. They're putting on a character, whereas in the scene they get off stage and then it's like, all right, I'm gonna go like hang out with my friends now. And it's very, I think the biggest difference is that one is very intense, like high stakes, and the other one is just a lot more chill. And there's also just so much room for like silliness, I feel like, because there's no pressure to be perfect when you're just performing for a bunch of friends at a DIY venue. That's fair.
So with the clickiness of theater community, you would say that that's all really attributed to stress or pressure?
I like to hope so. I do know some of it is also just some people think that they are better than others, and so they will only hang out with people that they believe are a cut above the rest. But I mean, even when I was just like in show choir, there were certain people I didn't talk to because they didn't put in as much effort, and I felt like they weren't worth my time, which is a horrible thing to say. But it's a mentality you get stuck in of like, you need to like cut off dead weight. And so a lot of people think that anyone that isn't the lead in every show is dead weight.
Would you say it's kind of like it feels like a cutthroat industry, would you say? Do you think you'd be happy, like, if you continued to pursue like a college career, say you went to like Juilliard or something? Do you think you'd be happy?
I think I would be proud, but pride does not necessarily make one happy.
Yeah.
You can be surrounded by wealth and awards, but at the same time, it's like, I don't think I would be able to look at myself in the mirror every day knowing that I probably would have cut off a lot of the people I loved. Like, all the people that I talk to now, I'm sure I wouldn't be their friend if I was really seriously trying to pursue musical theater in which the way I wanted to after high school. And it's very lonely. Even, again, like, when you're at the top, no one is there with you.
Right. And then that mentality that you had mentioned of, like, cutting off dead weight in theater, do you think that that's a learned type of mentality, or do you think it's taught?
I think it's a little bit of both. Directors encourage it, which is the big problem. It's not that they're telling you, don't lift up your scene partner, but they teach you, like, if someone needs to carry the scene, make sure it's you. Like, if your partner doesn't know their lines or isn't putting in as much effort, like, you have to do double the work and you want to be the star on the stage. And that spotlight has to be on you, which is incredibly harsh.
Yeah.
On either end of it, being the dead weight and also being the spotlight. It's not fun.
Have you ever been in any, like, plays before?
I have.
What was that experience like?
So I never really did too much, like, theater up until high school, but junior year we did our first musical because we had a performing arts center finally. And I got one of the, like, supporting roles. I forgot how to speak English for a second. And he's meant to be, like, comedic relief, but at the time a lot of our cast didn't fully have their heart in it, and I had that mentality of, well, if no one's gonna shine, I need to shine. And I look back on it, and while it was fun, it felt horrible. I was incredibly rude to people during rehearsals because I felt like they weren't taking it seriously. And it's just high school theater. Yeah. And sure, I got the loudest applause every night, but it still didn't make me feel great because I wanted to have cast members with me that felt just as passionate. So it's like, yeah, even being the one under all that bright light, it's still not necessarily fun. And it hurts when you realize that you have taken on the behavior and you never want to be on the receiving end of that, but to be the one doing it arguably hurts more sometimes.
That mentality of, you need to be picking up the slack, would you say that that's like a cutthroat mentality to have?
It shouldn't be one, but it very quickly turns into one, especially when it comes to theater. Because it starts as, we need to lift each other up and make sure we're all being held accountable. And then it ends as, you are useless and fine, I could do this show without you.
Yeah. Do you think that mentality, at least, during the time you were in high school, did that leave the theater room? Did you apply that to your day-to-day friendships as well?
I tried really hard not to, because I know how much it hurts. There were definitely times where #it was not that deep, and I made it that deep. But I'm very glad that I was aware that that's very damaging. So I tried really hard to avoid kind of having that, but it was like, because I didn't do that outside of the theater and the choir room, like a switch would flip when I was in that room, and I didn't like that.
Yeah. How did you come to realize that that wasn't the best, mentality to have?
There's a very specific moment, actually, that I can think about. I had auditioned for a solo my senior year, and the person who got the solo never came to rehearsals. And I had a fit. Not to the director, but I absolutely freaked out in private. And the friend I told this to was like, Luke, like, the things you just said, like, that's horrible. Like, you shouldn't say that about people. And in the moment I was so angry, I felt like I was so justified, and, they don't deserve this, they're horrible, they can't sing, they can't act. And I remember a couple days later, I just was like, holy shit, like, if someone said that about me in private and I found out, I would be destroyed. Because you never know how much effort someone is putting in, because everyone's 100% looks way different. Like, just because I may crank it to extremes doesn't mean other people aren't trying. And so that's when I was like, I really need to kind of reel that in and realize, one, it's not all about you. And two, again, it is just high school choir.
I feel like a lot with extracurricular activities or even like elective classes like that, like everything feels like life or death, like the whole world is on your shoulders. I took flag. I was in my color guard, and if it was so much more stressful than it needed to be. And do you think extracurricular activities like that are actually beneficial at that age?
I think they're like a lesson that needs to be learned, in the sense of taking choir and being in play production and whatnot really helped me hone in how much I love being on stage and performing. But with high school being the way it is, it messed up a lot of kids. Like, friends that I still have now to this day, we're 21 years old. We've been out of high school for a bit, okay? We still will talk about some of the things that have happened to us, like from choir, and like kids that were in color guard that have absolute horror stories. And I mean, it's like a cautionary tale of like, do it at your own risk, right? There are so many pros, especially with performing arts and just any form of like being on stage in front of people. I think everyone should do it, but you have to realize that it comes with a lot of baggage. And not every director is going to be sweet, and not all of the kids are going to be your friend, and you have to really be tough to sort of come out on the other side clean.
Now with taking those classes in college, do you, now that you've dropped out, do you feel like a pressure from like family or friends to go back to school?
Yes and no. I wanted to get my degree so badly because no one in my immediate family like graduated college. Like a lot of them have college credit, but like my parents met in the military, you know, so I felt like I was letting them down. But I remember I had a conversation with my brother about it, and he was like, you know, at least you went. I didn't even go. And it makes me sad because I would have loved to tough it out, but I just don't think 2 years, like even just getting my associates, I probably would not be in a good place.
College is tough. I mean, still, congratulations for going, and you know, you gave it the college try, literally.
And congrats to you, Miss 7 classes.
Thanks. I'm trying.
Busy bee.
I totally get what you're talking about. So my family, my mom dropped out of high school, 9th grade. I don't think my dad has any high school education. My siblings didn't go. My siblings dropped out of high school. I was the first person to graduate with my class. And when I took a gap year, just because I didn't know what I was doing, it felt like horrible. Like, my mom always said that because I was the middle child, I was the woe to the family. Not a great thing you should be preaching to your child.
Definitely not. But she, you know, no one was at my throat because of it, but it felt like the world was crashing down on me. Because, you know, how you said that you felt, do you regret dropping classes? Kind of. I had to drop some of them when I landed in the hospital because they said, too much stress, you're dying. And I was like, okay, well, I'll get rid of some of them. And I really wanted to at least finish the semester, but like right before I dropped out, I was only taking one class, and it was that art class. And I just like couldn't bring myself to get excited for it. Like, it's, you know, and I love art. So to not be excited to go and draw for 2 hours, that's how I knew it was like, I think I'm done. And I don't think I regret it, really. I think I'm just disappointed, not necessarily in myself, but disappointed that it couldn't work out for me because I really wanted it to. But it's not for everybody. And especially because I didn't go right after high school.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the longer you wait, the harder it is to go.
Yeah. Do you think that if you waited any longer, do you think you would just not go at all? Because I know it's hard to pick up the motivation of having, you know, academic validation from
Mm-hmm.
high school, and then we graduated in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and that was, I feel like, already a big pitfall in motivation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're staying home from March until a year and a half later.
Drive-through graduation.
Yeah, drive-through graduations. This is very real.
That dates this podcast.
Yeah, it really does. But do you think if you waited any longer, you wouldn't have gone to college at all?
I think I would have tried no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of how many classes I would have attempted to take.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a full-time student.
Right.
I started this semester with 4 classes.
Mm-hmm.
Did I end with any? No.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. Like, had I waited another year or 2 more years, maybe I would have tried just 2 classes.
Sure.
Or just slowly chipped away
Mm-hmm.
at an associate's.
Mm-hmm.
But I still don't think I would make it.
That's fair. And have you made art since taking classes?
Barely.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to draw every day. Because I play so much D&D, I try to make art for that every once in a while. But lately it's been hard to find inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've really tried to reconnect with myself and find that creativity again. Because drawing cubes and cones is not great.
Not inspiring.
Not inspiring. And especially on a drawing tablet.
Yeah.
I would rather just have charcoal in my hands.
Yeah. Would you say you're someone who likes more physical ways of drawing, or I guess traditional?
I do like traditional a lot. I mostly do digital,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it was just the fact of doing something that is so usually a traditional exercise,
Mm-hmm.
in front of a screen. It felt even more alienating because you're not bumping elbows with somebody and
Right.
charcoal hands on the desk.
Yeah.
And it's just a little pen in your hand.
Does it feel less intimate to you?
Yeah. Especially Control Alt Delete, not Control Delete, Control Z.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yikes.
Am I old? Do I know anything about computers? Being able to erase your canvas so easily kind of takes away a little bit of that real trial and error that you get from traditional, and seeing the eraser marks on your paper.
Right.
And it definitely feels a little more, for lack of a better term, robotic.
Sure. Would you say that that's an attributing factor to why you weren't so, I guess, motivated to continue going to art class?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
While it was mildly irritating, I do really enjoy drawing on tablets.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I would finish my work early and then just get to doodle.
Mm-hmm.
I think my biggest issue is just the curriculum wasn't doing it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was a gen ed art class,
Right.
so it's very focused on basics, and fundamentals are really important, perspective and just knowing your values and how to compose a piece is very important.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very draining.
Right. You really do have to put in the work to
Mm-hmm.
get, I guess, a more by the book sense of
Mm-hmm.
a finished product, quote unquote. I know you said that you haven't really made much art after taking classes, but where do you draw inspiration from?
Okay, let me tell you. One of my big things is I have a Pinterest, as most gay people do.
Mm-hmm.
But I specifically have a board that is just these very ostentatious outfits, feathers and gold and huge headpieces. I love things like funky armor and just all the sorts of different eras of fashion. So I feel like I pull a lot of my inspiration from just very funky fashion choices.
Mm-hmm.
I also really like shape language. So when I draw, I start everything out with circles or triangles, squares. I love having very exaggerated kind of pieces. It almost reminds me of I really love high fashion runway silhouettes with the super long shoulders. I think a lot of my inspiration both comes from video games that I like and just that very avant-garde, like cunty Vogue.
I love it.
Yes.
Have you ever looked into different art fields of being like, not in like UI, but or I guess IX. I don't know the exact term for it, but like video game design or like fashion design or costume design, stuff like that.
Being a storyboard artist, or like a character designer of sorts for a video game was probably my dream job for a hot minute, alongside being a voice actor. I think if I really put some time into, getting a bit more of a by the book sort of art style, just so that way I can exaggerate as much as I want, I would love to throw a portfolio out there and do some work. Like, I've done very minor things in the past, but I'm such a nerd. If my name was ever in the credits of a game, I would cry.
I'd milk that. I would take a picture of it and I'd put it on everywhere. Right? You get it tattooed. You put a poster up. It's like the biggest thing when you walk into my house. Like that would I don't care if it's
on
like
the door.
It's the tiniest font ever on like the end credits. I'd still have it.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you have to be proud of yourself for stuff like that. You mentioned voice acting. What was that experience like for you?
All of the voice acting stuff I did, I was in high school, and a lot of it was for friends and things that ended up on like YouTube and Tumblr. So thankfully I'm on T now, so if anyone ever happens to listen to this and recognizes my voice in any capacity, no you don't. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, because it's another facet of like performing, and I'm a very exaggerated person. So getting to be just very emotional while also being able to make the ugliest faces possible because no one is seeing that is really fun. You get the very raw takes of like tears and screaming, and even just like pure happiness, I feel like is a lot of fun when you're voice acting, because it is also your body language. You get to just kind of run around while you do takes, and it's a lot of fun. And I would love to do more of it. I've been meaning to put out like answers to casting calls. I'm just lazy.
Do you think that would be something you'd be willing to pursue as a career?
Absolutely. As I sort of focus more on like honing in on playing instruments and being in a band, it's definitely taken a bit of a backseat. But if I could be a voice actor, even just like part-time, like even if I still worked at McDonald's, but I got to be in a couple of really big name things, like I could die happy. Because just getting to see yourself like come to life, but it's not you, I feel like is something that's really, really cool. Yeah.
If you had like your dream life, if you could paint your own picture perfectly, what would be a franchise you'd love to be a part of?
Ooh, okay. Like, dream gig. I'm a Final Fantasy kid. I always have been. Final Fantasy 7 and 8 were some of my favorite games. Shout out. If there was a Final Fantasy that came out that was good, because I haven't really played the newest ones too much. 16 was a Final Fantasy that came out. If there was a new Final Fantasy that came out, it looked great. Like 16 was like the pro tag, or just if there was a new Final Fantasy that came out, I would probably run around or just screaming for at least a year afterwards. Because also I have to sign the NDA and not say anything until the Castles comes out. I would be insane. So I have to sign the NDA and not say anything until the Castles comes out. I would be insane.
My memory good enemy signing like an NDA. I never shut up. And I don't think I could if it was something like that. Like I'd be like, I have got this call. One friend.
Right?
That's what happened.
Something really chill happened.
How do you feel about
I hate the writing. I love the aesthetics.
Do you appreciate the franchise? Do you like it?
I hate the writing. I love the aesthetics.
That's fair. I do appreciate it. Do you have a favorite
Most of
movie?
the times I've watched rom movies. I haven't been completely okay.
I think that helps.
I think that helps. You know what? Actually,
I think that helps.
I think that helps. But you know what? Spider-Man. I can be the first motherfucking Spider-Man. I can be the first trans man to Spider-Man. Alright, I'll swim around.
What's your spider son?
My spider son, I would love to do that. Have you seen the times on Amazon? Because it's giving like
Yeah.
I would love to do that. Like absolutely. That's not fully a good thing. It's giving like now. You know,
What would your
like,
coach give you?
that's not fully a good thing.
What would your coach give you?
So I feel like we're very like no, I'm really close. Because keeping that kind of traditional Spider-Man, I would love a really dark girl. And maybe like keeping that kind of traditional Spider-Man, some black, like dark, little, and maybe like some saucy. Do you have some black, special like side? Like saucy.
Do you have a special little like side power? Side power?
Side power. I'm hot.
That comes with the package, baby.
Yeah. Not just necessarily strong influence. I'm hot. Just like just a good person. I promise you guys. I don't know. It's getting so. Yeah, I'm a good person. I promise you guys.
It's getting so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you. How do you, okay, so very recently, I'm not sure if you've heard, but Chris Pratt, the man of the hour, who can't voice how do you feel about him being, like he played Mario, he's playing Garfield, how do you feel about that?
Big name, you don't want to put out big names for the production. I get it. You don't want to put out. We can do better from the production. We can do better than that. There are good actors. We can do better. We can also voice out. We can do better. And I think there are good actors. Chris Pratt, who can also voice out.
Yeah.
He sounds the same in every role that he's in, and it kind of resonates. His acting's fine. Just he sounds like it's almost like a joke now. Like it feels like they're doing it because it's become such a huge joke at this point. It's almost like a joke. Kind of keep this one going, but I would love to see actual voice actors in big movies like that. But I mean, I would love to see. You know, everybody talks about Matthew Mercer, Laura Bailey. She's this very talented woman who's voiced a lot of things. But like Laura Bailey, I would love to see some smaller name, just like be Garfield. At least get someone that can do like the sad Garfield voice. Because the Garfield now, at least get someone that can. I don't think there's sad Garfield voice.
Yeah. Because the Garfield now, I mean, I don't think there's, I'm not sure if there's an official clear out. I think clips
That's
are
a
posted on Instagram.
paying taxes for
It's not Garfield, that isn't, I don't like Garfield. That is a man who's been paying taxes for too long. That is not Garfield.
He doesn't even get this out because he can't afford it.
That's a little crazy. So going back to classes, if you took an art major, for example, and you had this same dilemma, you took in-person classes and you're kind of let down by the idea of critiques, do you think you kind of spiraled with that, or do you think you would still continue in a different way?
Honestly, knowing me, I'd probably spiral. Honestly, knowing me, I'd probably. I think it was easier for me to get class because that's especially my major. I think it was easier for me to get I had gone in because being like an art major and then it wasn't working for me. I hadn't gone in, probably taken it way too close to home. Because I mean that's like going to culinary school and being told you can't bake, you can't cook. Because I mean that's like it would go to culinary school but you can't bake at the same time you can't cook. Like, I think I would also be able to kind of repeat the code back and remember that again. I think it would also be school. Is school for a reason. They're teaching everybody the same thing. So that's why it's not great for because art is all about being creative. Everybody the same. I mean, it sucks to creativity. It's not great. We've talked about this. So it's like neither of us are so key on particularly during class. On art, it's very sad during class.
Yeah.
And just acknowledging that some people are creative at school. I'm not just acknowledging that some people, if I really do learn something, I'll look up a YouTube tutorial from some manga artist from 2000.
Right. I feel like I want to know what you think about this. So I've heard this phrase before that there are no more original thoughts. Everything has already been done. Every song has already been sung. Every poem has been written. Everything is already done. Just because as people have been creating and making for so long, and that no matter what you do, you're almost always inspired by another person, or you take a little bit of something from everyone. Do you feel that way with your art? Do you think your art is 100% yours?
Because there are always original ideas and thoughts, and it's weird people are growing and changing so much. Because like always, I feel like I wake up and have original thoughts way too often because I'm crazy. I feel like I have original thoughts way too much. Like a lot of things in my life is like a giant quilt of all the things I wish. Like a lot of things in my life is like a giant quilt. I think that's really important because yes, you're always going to be inspired by something, but that doesn't make what you're creating any less original, right? Like you're not plagiarizing, but that doesn't mean like if I take this artist draws eyelashes because I like it, this artist does color because I like it, and the way this person draws hands, this artist does color because yes, it is of the people and things that person draws hands, but it's still mine. Yes, you know, it is obviously to a certain degree that can get a little dicey because some people do just like to copy things, but you know, can get a little dicey because give your own take on how you feel like a fresh take on the concept. Always, you're never going to style. Like I feel like a fresh take on the whole concept. I think this is so never going to style.
Now, I want to know what you think about this. So, when I started digital drawing, there's a lot of work that I haven't posted just because I was scared that something was going to be a bit too on the nose or someone would recognize it. This was my whole career. But how do you think people would trace poses, like just the pose, the body's in the same shape, form, whatever. You tweak the body a little bit to have different proportions. It's still completely your style. The only thing you copy is the pose.
Like those, I think it just, yeah. I think that's perfectly fine. Like if it's an artist,
Like rotoscoping.
then
Yeah.
I think that's rather than people referenced it heavily, then versus tracing it. Well, yeah, because also people, the artist has perfect proportions anyways.
Versus tracing?
Oh yeah, because there's anything versus tracing perfect proportions. It's very so by tracing you're not recognizing whereas with tracing you're so hard now. Your rib cage fits kind of like your bones are and like your cage fits, and I used to just trace photos off of Google Images, like put a paper up to the screen and stuff. I used to just trace photos like Google Images and put a paper up to the screen. So yeah, I feel like real images, it's free game, right? And a lot of those are put on the internet for people to trace and kind of like study. Like you know, figure studies are very important. But with other artists, just because again everyone draws everything differently, it's not the greatest idea. But you should, like, if you want to reference it. I do that all the time. Where I'm like, ooh, I like that perspective. Let me draw it.
Have you ever taken your own reference pictures?
So many times. There have been so many embarrassing photos of me, just like in the strangest positions.
Have
or
you
like hands.
posted them?
No. Maybe I should. I'll create my folder of all my references where I'm just like.
That'll be your
portfolio.
portfolio.
Wait, they can't see this, but I'm making silly poses right now.
Just imagine Luke like voguing in a really like cunty way.
Always.
Yeah, always. It just comes with it. That's really cute. So for someone in your situation, what advice would you give them for, you know, you went to college, it didn't work out for you. What advice would you give someone kind of trying to find their next pathway?
I would say, this sounds kind of silly at first, but like, go outside. And I'm being so serious of just like, go see what's happening in your neighborhood, like local markets. I mean, we just passed by one on the way in here. Local markets, local shows, anything, like even just different careers of maybe this place is hiring and you thought you would never do that, but put in an application anyways. I mean, you know, like I said, I thought I was going to get my BFA in musical theater and live in LA and do all sorts of crazy stuff. And now I'm in a punk band. And it's just because I saw that there was a show happening and I went, yeah, I have nothing to do this Friday night. And I think it's really important to just keep your options really open, especially when you feel lost. because you almost want to railroad yourself back to where you were, but it's so much better to just kind of split off from the path. And if you find your way back to it, then that's perfect. But I think, especially like as young adults, like 20 somethings, we have to remind ourselves that like we are just barely coming into adulthood, and we have so much time to do so many things, and it's the perfect time to explore, and that you're never really lost. You know, you just kind of got a little turned around. You just need to walk a different way. Don't do that if you're lost in the woods, though. Do try and find your way back.
Yes. Stay planetary. Do you ever feel like you're falling behind in a sense?
I used to a lot, especially when I came to school, and very recently I've been kind of kicking myself in the butt and realizing like I'm not behind. Everyone moves at a different pace. Like my best friend's mom is in college right now, and she's like turning 60, you know, and like my life is my own and my choices are my own, and so the path that I choose to take, I'm doing everything at the exact speed I need to be for me, and that's important.
That's good. I really like that. I really admire that you have such a good head on your shoulders.
Didn't always.
When I met you. But that just shows, you know, how much growth you've had as a person. And I had a question that I wanted to ask earlier, and then I forgot about it. But do you think being in performing arts attributed to confidence that you have now?
Absolutely. For all the bad things it did. I was the most introverted individual you would have ever met in your life until I was like 16 years old, which I had already been in choir my whole life, but I really started paying attention in like show choir and really caring about being on stage. And ever since, you know, I love people, I love performing, I love being expressive, I love watching people be expressive. I cheer loudly at shows. Like, I don't mind not necessarily being the center of attention, but I like to be loud and crazy, so it makes other people want to be loud and crazy, which is why I think a lot of my friends are introverts. I inspire them to be nuts.
That's good. I mean, do you think you mesh well with like strangers? Like, if you would you be the type of person to go up to a stranger and just strike a random conversation with them just because you felt like it?
I did yesterday.
How'd that go?
Fun. We're friends now.
That's good.
Yeah, I really like getting to hear people's stories, and I used to be terrified of talking to people, but now it's so much fun. Even if the conversation doesn't go well, I had an experience with the person I didn't know before, and it'll stay with me forever. And like, I like that a lot. And I mean, people are so fascinating. Like, everyone, just people watching, and like I always wonder what the people in the cars that pass by me are doing. You know? I feel like this sometimes. It's almost like an existential crisis kind of deal, but I think it's also just having awareness. Sometimes if I feel very introspective, I'll be, you know, walking the sidewalk of going wherever I need to go, and I'll look to the side and I see that there's, you know, all these people in their cars. I'm like, these are real people. They all have their own names. They all have their own lives. They have places they need to go to. Does that lead to kind of like an existential crisis to you, that you're not, you know, the center of your own world? Honestly, no.
That's good.
I think it used to kind of freak me out, but while I'm very much an individual, I love being a cog in the machine at the same time. And I love knowing that everyone's lives are just as interesting as mine, even if they don't think they are. Because they're having the exact same experience as I am, where it's like, just realizing that there are like so many other people and so many different things happening is so fun to me, because sure, my day-to-day might be crazy, but so is the person that just passed me on the freeway. And I don't know, it makes me happy, especially when I see like cool gay people in their cars. I'm like, ooh, what are they doing? I'm like, oh my god, hi.
Hey babe, how you doing? I saw there's this girl, she was walking out of a Daiso. She looked so cool, and she walked to her like lime green bus, and she has a bunch of stickers on the back, and one was in like, it was like a meme font, and it was like honk if you're also letting it linger, and it was like a Cranberries thing. It was really cool. But I think that's just about time. Is there any last words you want to say?
Yes, if you live in San Diego, go to shows. That's the one thing I can tell you, people. If you like punk, rock, metal, any hardcore stuff, even indie, there are shows for everything in San Diego, and it's a lot of fun, and you meet some really cool people. And like I said, it completely changed my life. So I don't know, go explore and do fun things. And don't do them for other people, do them for yourself.
And where can we find you?
In the woods. No, I don't, honestly, I'm not very present on anything at the moment. You can catch me on Instagram, though. It's at Abjurative Ward. If you're not a nerd, that's ABJURATIVE. I can't spell. Ward, WARD. So that's me. I am in a band. It's called Transmutation. We don't have an Instagram yet, but we will soon. So, I don't know. If you look at my Instagram and you see it, go follow it. We're making music. I'm playing bass, baby.
Ooh. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, viewers, for staying tuned to the String Theory podcast. We will see you next week, and good night.